My brother stalked and harassed my girlfriend while my parents defended him. They called me unstable and tried to gaslight us. But after he crossed the line at a family wedding, we cut ties forever. Years later, his collapse proved cutting ties saved us. I knew I had made a mistake the moment Elena stepped into my parents' house. My younger brother Derek shoved past me to greet her first, grabbing her in a hug so long it forced her to awkwardly peel herself away. She laughed it off because that's who Elena is. Kind, patient, always trying to make the best of things. But I saw the tightness in her smile. I should have dragged her out right then. At dinner, Derek found every excuse to touch her. A brush of the hand here, a pat on the shoulder there. He whispered inside jokes to her, jokes that didn't make sense because they'd only just met. And then, without a shred of shame, he lifted a piece of chicken on his fork and leaned across the table toward her. "Come on, just one bite," he grinned as if they were on a date. Elena blinked, frozen. Politely, she shook her head. I reached across and physically moved the fork away, muttering something about boundaries. My parents just laughed like it was some adorable prank between siblings. Then Derek turned the spotlight onto me. He told the table wildly twisted stories from our childhood, exaggerations and outright lies. How I cried for days when my first girlfriend dumped me. How he had to rescue her from my clinginess. Elena shot me confused glances, but I stayed silent. I knew that if I defended myself, it would only fuel Derek's performance. I thought I could endure it. I thought if we just made it through the night, we could leave and pretend this disaster never happened. I was wrong. Later, while I helped my dad move some old boxes in the garage, I realized Elena wasn't around. I called out for her. No answer. A sick feeling twisted my gut. I dropped the box and rushed inside. I found them in the kitchen. Derek had her cornered against the counter, one arm blocking her way out. He was leaning in, whispering something I couldn't quite hear, but I saw the look on Elena's face. Disgust. She spotted me and immediately slipped under Derek's arm, hurrying to my side like she was running from a fire. I barely kept my fists at my sides. "Back off," I snapped. Derek just laughed, throwing his hands up like I was the one being dramatic. "Relax, man, we were just talking." That night, driving home, Elena sat stiffly in the passenger seat. She hadn't said a word since we left. I finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry," I said. I should have warned you." She turned, brows furrowed. "Warned me about what?" I told her everything. About how Derek had sabotaged my past relationships. About the ex who broke up with me because Derek convinced her family I was a gambling addict. About the time he told another girl I'd cheated when I hadn't. About how my parents always made excuses for him, always said I was the unstable one. I was overreacting. I told Elena that was why I'd kept her away from my family for so long. Not because I was ashamed of her, but because I was terrified of this exact thing happening. Tears welled up in her eyes. Not because she doubted me, but because now she was part of it. 2 days later, Elena started getting strange texts from unknown numbers. First, it was just heavy breathing or hang-ups. Then messages calling her frigid and stuck up for rejecting someone better. Some messages described what she was wearing that day, what coffee shop she'd stopped at on her lunch break. They were watching her. She tried to brush it off at first, told herself it was just a coincidence. But I knew better. The phrasing, the references, they matched the crude humor Derek and his high school buddies had always used. It had to be him. I begged Elena to block the numbers. She did, but new ones kept popping up. Then it escalated. Derek's friends started showing up at her workplace. The pediatric ward where she worked was supposed to be safe, a place of healing. Instead, they loitered in the halls, pretending to visit patients, lurking outside her break room. Once one of them accidentally brushed her arm and whispered, "You'll regret turning down a real man." Another night, after a 12-hour shift, she found one of them waiting by her car. She locked herself inside, shaking, and called me in tears. I raced to the hospital. I ended up driving her home while a buddy followed in his truck to make sure no one was tailing us. Elena started waking up from nightmares. She flinched whenever her phone buzzed. She stopped going to her favorite coffee shop, stopped jogging in the mornings, and stopped living. I tried confronting Derek. I showed up at my parents' house without warning. Derek answered the door, all smug smiles. "You need to back the hell off," I growled, my hands trembling with rage. "Leave Elena alone. Tell your friends to stop." He laughed, actually laughed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "You're so sensitive, bro. Maybe if you weren't such a loser, you wouldn't have to worry about her leaving you. I lunged at him, but my dad pulled me off before I could even land a punch. My mom stood there wringing her hands, looking like I was the problem. "You're being irrational," she said. "You're scaring us." Not the son who stalked and harassed my girlfriend. They accused me of being unstable, paranoid, making things up. My mom even dared to say maybe Elena had misinterpreted Derek's attention. That night, Elena cried herself to sleep in my arms. I held her and promised we'd get through it, that I would protect her. But inside, I knew this was just the beginning, because 2 nights later, Elena found a note tucked under her windshield wiper. It was written in messy, jagged handwriting. No signature, just 5 words that turned my blood to ice. "You can't keep her forever." The night Elena found that note under her windshield changed everything. She came into the apartment, pale and shaking, holding the scrap of paper like it might burn her fingers. I read it once. "You can't keep her forever." And rage surged through me so hard my vision blurred. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was a threat. We spent the next hour sitting on the living room floor, trying to figure out what to do. Elena's hands kept trembling no matter how tightly she clutched her coffee mug. I could see it dawning on her. There was no easy way out of this. We decided we had to go to the police. I took photos of the note, the text messages, the call logs, everything. Elena printed out screenshots from the hospital's visitor sign-in sheets showing Derek's friends loitering on her floor. We compiled it all into a sad little manila folder, our desperate attempt at building a case. The officer at the station barely looked at it. "Sounds like typical ex-boyfriend drama," he said with a shrug. "Nothing we can really do unless he actually harms her." I wanted to scream. Elena sat there stone-faced, her fingers digging crescents into her jeans. We left the station feeling more hopeless than when we went in. A friend of mine who worked in private security told me flat out, "In this town, Derek's family name carries weight. You won't get justice here, not unless something undeniable happens." I hated that he was right, but we weren't giving up. We bought pepper spray, changed Elena's work schedule. I started picking her up every night after her shifts. We stopped posting anything on social media. At home, we kept the lights low and the doors double locked. I even installed security cameras outside the apartment. It wasn't a life, it was survival. Then came the family meeting. My mom called one evening, voice syrupy sweet. "Honey, let's just clear the air. Come over for dinner. Bring Elena." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We walked into my parents' house and immediately knew something was wrong. It wasn't just my parents. Half the extended family was there. Cousins, aunts, Derek's high school friends, all crowded into the living room. I felt Elena stiffen beside me. "You set us up," I said under my breath. My mom clapped her hands. "Let's all just talk like adults." Talk was the last thing they wanted. They accused Elena of flirting with Derek, accused her of provoking him by dressing too nicely or laughing too much. Someone even suggested she had led him on to make me jealous. The worst part? They said it all to her face. Elena sat there shrinking smaller and smaller as the accusations rained down. Every protest she made was twisted into another attack against her character. Every tear she wiped away was called manipulative. At one point, one of Derek's friends, a guy named Marcus who had sent her some of the worst messages, actually smirked and said, "You're lucky Derek likes you so much." That's when I lost it. I grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her out of there, ignoring the shouts and insults behind us. We barely made it back to the car before Elena collapsed into sobs so violent she could barely breathe. She had a panic attack that night, and another the next day when she found out rumors were spreading at her job. Rumors started by Derek's old friends that painted her as unstable, easy, dangerous to have around children. Her supervisor pulled her into a private meeting. "We're concerned about optics," they said carefully. They didn't fire her yet, but they made it clear her reputation was in serious jeopardy. We hired a lawyer the next morning. I handed over the file of evidence we had collected. Elena and I met with HR at the hospital. We started documenting everything, keeping records of every harassing message, every suspicious vehicle parked near her work, every anonymous call. Still, it felt like bailing out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. The final straw came at a family wedding. A cousin we barely knew was getting married at a fancy country club outside town. Against my instincts, we went, because Elena, bless her heart, still clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, If we showed up and acted normal, things would settle down. God, I wish I had listened to my gut. The reception was in full swing when it happened. I left Elena at the bar for a minute to grab us some drinks. When I turned around, she was gone. Panic lit up in my chest. I searched frantically, through the banquet hall, the lobby, the garden. Then I heard it, a muffled shout from the hallway leading to the bathrooms. I ran. There, pinned against the wall, was Elena and Derek. His hands were on her shoulders, his face inches from hers, his voice low and angry. I didn't stop to think. I tackled him off her. Security rushed over, guests started shouting, and miracle of miracles. The security cameras in the hallway had captured the whole thing. The footage showed Derek grabbing her, shoving her, yelling in her face while she struggled to push him away. It was undeniable. For the first time, people couldn't spin it. They couldn't pretend it was harmless flirting or misinterpreted affection. You know what my parents did? They blamed her anyway. They stood there, in front of the security guard, the wedding planner, the whole damn family, and accused Elena of leading Derek on to cause drama at someone else's special day. I stood between Elena and my parents, shaking with rage. "We're done," I said. Done pretending this was a family worth saving. Done hoping they'd ever protect someone they claimed to love. Done letting Derek tear apart everything good in my life. We left that night and never looked back. The next week, we broke our lease, packed everything we owned into a U-Haul, and drove 12 hours south to a city where Derek's name carried no weight, no family, no poison roots. Life got quiet after we moved. For the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling like there was a noose tightening around my throat. Elena and I found a cheap apartment with paper-thin walls and a broken heater, but it was ours. No one knew us here. No one followed us, whispered behind our backs, or twisted our words into weapons. We got married in a tiny courthouse ceremony. Just me, her, and two friends we'd made at our new job standing as witnesses. Elena wore a simple white dress she found on clearance, and I bought a ring so modest it barely cost $100. But when she smiled at me that day, tears shining in her eyes, it felt richer than any diamond-studded affair we'd ever been denied. We built a new life out of scraps. New jobs, new routines, new traditions that were just ours. Sundays became pancake mornings. Friday nights, we watched bad horror movies under a tangle of blankets. We celebrated tiny victories, a good work review, a sunny day, a funny text message. We survived, and then we started to thrive. A year later, we bought a small, battered house on the edge of town. It had creaky floors, a sagging roof, and a backyard full of weeds. But it also had warmth, safety, a front door we could lock against the world. Some nights, Elena still woke up gasping from nightmares. Some days, a strange car parked too long down the street would set my heart racing, but we were healing. And then Elena got pregnant. When she showed me the test, her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. I wrapped my arms around her and held her close while we both cried. Fear, joy, terror, hope, all tangled together. We promised right then, our child would never know the hell we had escaped. We named her Lily, even before she was born, a symbol of something pure, untouched. Lily came into the world screaming, a fierce, beautiful noise that made my chest ache with love. I cut the cord with shaking hands while Elena sobbed with exhaustion and triumph. For 2 years, our world shrank to just the three of us, our little family fortress, until the phone call shattered everything. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon when my cell buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years. At first, I thought about ignoring it, but something, instinct, dread, fate, made me answer. It was my mother. Her voice was different, haggard, raw. "Please," she said before I could even speak. "Please, I just need you to listen." I stayed silent. He's been arrested." The words didn't hit at first. It was like she was speaking a different language. He hurt someone," she whispered. "His wife, Sophia. It's bad. It's real bad." I leaned against the kitchen counter, my legs threatening to give out. I barely knew her. Sometime after Elena and I had cut ties, Derek had married a woman he met through mutual friends. From the tiny glimpses I'd caught through the occasional gossip pipeline, Sophia was quiet, shy, a small-town girl who worked as a dental assistant and liked baking shows. She didn't stand a chance. My mother's voice cracked. "Your father, He covered for him, hid evidence, lied to the police. Now they're both facing charges. She started sobbing, ugly broken sobs that scraped against my nerves. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "We were wrong. About everything. About Derek. About you." The bitterness rose in my throat like bile, but it was so goddamn late. Through tear-choked words, she told me the whole story, how Sophia had endured years of escalating abuse, bruises, broken bones, gaslighting, how my father had helped Derek cover it up, pressuring neighbors to stay silent, intimidating Sophia's friends. How Derek's rage had finally gone too far one night, landing Sophia in the ICU, unconscious, battered, barely breathing, and how finally the police couldn't ignore it anymore. There was video evidence, medical records, witnesses who had been too afraid to speak until now. The carefully constructed lie of my family, perfect, successful, untouchable, was crumbling. I listened in silence as my mother begged for forgiveness, for another chance, for my trust, but I had no more to give. When I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at my trembling hands. Elena found me there. I told her everything. We held each other, crying for a woman we barely knew. A woman who had lived our same nightmare, only worse. We wanted to help, but we knew we couldn't get directly involved. Contact with Sophia could backfire, be used against her in court by Derek's lawyers. So we worked quietly, through a mutual acquaintance, a social worker friend of Elena's, making sure Sophia had access to shelter resources, legal aid, therapy. We sent donations anonymously. We prayed and waited, and through it all, a new horror took root inside me. If we hadn't escaped, if Elena had stayed trapped in my family's orbit, it could have been her. There was no more doubting, no more minimizing, no more wondering if maybe, just maybe, we'd overreacted years ago. The truth was clear and vicious. We had barely survived. The shame of that truth still lingers. But the story doesn't end there. Because even as Derek rotted in a jail cell, even as my father fought desperate, losing battles in courtrooms, other ghosts from my past started clawing their way back. The day Derek was sentenced, I didn't go to court. I didn't watch him cry or rage or beg for mercy. He never once showed to the people he hurt. I didn't care how long the judge lectured him. I didn't care what excuses he scraped together. I was home with Elena and Lily, sitting on the floor of the living room, building a castle out of plastic blocks with my daughter. That was my victory. A little girl with my eyes and Elena's stubborn chin, giggling as she knocked over the towers we built, only to demand we do it again. A life full of messes, noise, scraped knees, bedtime stories. The beautiful, ordinary chaos Derek had never known and would never destroy. He got 15 years. 15 years to sit in a cell and rot in the ruins of the life he set on fire. My father didn't fare much better. The evidence that came out during Sophia's trial was brutal. Financial records, witness intimidation, falsified documents. He lost his job, his social circle, his reputation. Last I heard, he was fighting multiple lawsuits and burning through what little money the family had left. My mother sent another letter. She apologized again. This time more specific, more broken. She confessed that they had seen warning signs with Derek all along. The cruelty, the manipulation, the obsession with control. But instead of stopping him, they protected him, made excuses, gaslighted everyone around him, because admitting who he really was would mean admitting they had failed. They chose pride over truth, until it was too late for everyone. I read her letter exactly once, then tucked it into a drawer. I didn't respond. Forgiveness isn't a door you open just because someone finally knocks. It's something you build over time, with trust and honesty and change. And some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Other women came forward after Sophia's case broke open. Old classmates, former co-workers, neighbors. Women who had been harassed, stalked, manipulated, all by Derek over years and years of unchecked abuse. Some of their stories stretched back to high school. Some were terrifyingly recent. Hearing their voices gave me a kind of grim clarity. Derek hadn't been a brother who got carried away or a son who made mistakes. He was a predator, and my parents, for all their hand-wringing and excuses, had been his accomplices. There's no healing that. There's no family reunion, no holiday forgiveness dinner, no hugs and tears that erase what was allowed to happen. So I didn't let them back in. Not for birthdays, not for anniversaries, not even when my mother begged to meet Lily, promising she was a different person now. Lily would never know the poisoned soil I came from. She would never have to sit at a dinner table and wonder why the people who were supposed to protect her kept siding with her tormentor. She would never lie awake at night replaying threats and gaslighting until her sanity frayed at the edges. She would grow up loved, protected, and not just safe from strangers, safe from the people who smiled sweetly and stabbed you where no one could see. We live a quiet life now. Our days are filled with simple things, packing school lunches, arguing about bedtime, cheering from the sidelines at soccer games. Elena went back to work part-time, and I started my own small business doing home repairs. We have real friends, people who know our story and stayed anyway. People who helped us move furniture, brought casseroles after Lily's ear infections, texted just to say they were thinking of us. A real family. Built, not inherited. And sometimes, on rare nights after Lily's asleep, Elena and I sit on the porch and talk about everything we survived. We don't pretend it didn't happen. We don't pretend we're untouched by it, but we are not defined by it anymore. It shaped us, yes. It scarred us, yes. But it didn't destroy us. We chose to leave. We chose love over fear. And that choice, made again and again every day, is what saved us. I watch Lily now, chasing fireflies barefoot in the backyard, her laughter carrying through the twilight air. And I know, the cycle ends with me. No more second chances for abusers. No more pretending that blood is thicker than dignity, safety, or peace. Family isn't who shares your DNA. Family is who shows up, who fights for you, who makes you better, not smaller. And for the first time in my life, I am proud of the family I've built. Messy, stubborn, resilient, ours always. If you made it this far, thanks for riding with me. If you love real, messy, emotional stories like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. There's always another confession waiting in the backseat.